I think when it comes to tradition and customs, it's always been a great way for me to kind of connect with my family. A lot of our traditions and customs kind of like imbibe that in us, just like a lot of care and love for the people in our lives. A favorite tradition of mine would be that I would always go to my neighbor's house during Ganesh Chaturthi. And while I'm not directly related to them, they always made me feel really welcome.
For me, it means family. Like it's a grounding factor for me because I think I follow most of the traditional thing. I'm always involved in any of the traditional customs that we have at home. If there is a personal favorite, I am a person from Kerala and I love Sadhya. So Onam is like my favorite thing, and I like Onam because it doesn't associate generally to one religion. I think in Kerala, Onam is celebrated across all religions. That's one festival that everyone comes together.
It is nice to see that the old traditions and culture is being carried on from all these generations to us, and we are still doing it. So I like to fast on Shivratri because I like to think that I'm a part of something. Like my relatives, my mother, my aunts, and everyone does that. But I don't know what we get from it. I think it's all in the mind. But I guess Shivratri is my favorite.
Traditions, customs, and cultures, to me, are a way of life, of how things have been for a long time. And they may or may not make sense to everyone, but generally there's a story, there's a reason behind why traditions go on from generations to generations. And it's really the simple things that I like. Having lived here for 5 years, even now I like being bare feet. And I do know that in the Indian subcontinent, we tend to be bare feet for the most part. And that's the one tradition I really enjoy.
I feel like I want to relate it to time. So to say that the way I look at it is very different from the way my mother looks at it, is very different from what my grandmother looks at. The way I approach it is really, really different. In terms of a personal favorite, I think that so I believe in this, I call it faith, almost like a superpower, but I do believe in a superpower, and my favorite ritual is just having a chat with this faith of mine, and it's more often than not just talking to myself, but it feels nice to continue this. Is something that I'm carrying forward, having learned from them and manifesting it to my own self.
I think a lot of that has to do with respecting your own culture and being considerate of the meanings of different traditions. I also think it kind of depends on how that tradition is. There's a balance to be found there where our experiences with our traditions are deeply personal. The way in which we interact with something, if we kind of treat that as a performance, like the way in which we interact with something is very different from other people. So to see that in the eyes of like a performer is like to show that like unique side of something that a lot of people can relate to, and I think that's very beautiful.
A lot of traditions incorporate art or can be viewed as an art because traditions such as preparing rangoli for Diwali, the artistic opportunities are immense. Or even Ram Leela, or in the south it's Narkasurs. There's a great amount of art that goes in it. In fact, as a child, I would spend a lot of time making an effigy, and we would burn it, and as a kid it really sucked. When you have all that effort into making something and then tearing it down. but it teaches you that it's the spirit of the art that continues to live on.
Yes, I think it can be viewed as an artistic practice because I think even for Onam we have the flower arrangement. A lot of artistic work go into it.
In Navratri, we play dandiya, right? So it is like dance is also a form of art, right? And it takes practice to do the garba and dandiya and stuff.
I definitely think that these traditional customs and rituals can be viewed as an artistic practice. When I'm home, we have rangolis all over the house. We have flowers just everywhere, and then I feel like that's her way of engaging in art. So definitely it can be viewed as an artistic practice.
I do think that some traditions hold us back, but I also do think that some traditions help us. I think personally what's helped me is I look upon my elders with respect and always feel like they have a story to offer or something that I could learn from them. And I think that tradition has helped me in having this perspective that people around me have a story to share, and I try to learn as much as I can about them because you learn so much from so many people, about the life around us, and life's rich tapestry of personalities is something I enjoy.
Prayers in general, as a kid, I used to do them quite religiously, and it was this time I'd take out to, well, back then it would be kind of to pray to God and wish that, everything will be all right today, everything will be all right tomorrow, like you're looking after me, kind of a thing. I try to take that time out of my day to not only comfort myself, but also comfort others that just in life, like taking that time out to kind of check in with yourself and like making sure you're okay.
I've never thought about it.
I don't think I've come across anything. Maybe superstitious beliefs, not this. No traditional customs or anything that's crossed my path. No, I don't think there has been. There's only been involvement.
Engaging in Diwali, the one that I could remember was making rangolis, and I feel like that's when I learned how to play with other things apart from crayons, and just that act of drawing something like relates back to how I draw in architecture. Like the first thing that led me to wanting to be an architect, I think was influenced a lot by seeing my mother do that, and then me trying that and having some faith that I can do something more with learning how to draw.
I think surface level, when I automatically think of them, I think of like Morse code. Like I think of code in like specific. I guess like metaphorically, it's kind of like you in the world, where you're a part of this big system, but you're also your individual self, and that counts for something. You have a role for a reason.
When you're making drawings, line weights can make or break the beauty of a drawing. I think same for dots. Like I almost imagine like this pattern, a cluster of dots. Like if I'm looking at that with a squinted eye, I could almost start to make an object.
A line is just a very long connection of dots. I could view them as building blocks for an architectural drawing. In fact, one of the engineering drawings that I just finished a couple of weeks ago, they're basically points and lines. I see of points and lines as tools to complete an architectural engineering drawing.
Dots and lines are usually like geometrical figures or like related to maths and geometry. But I think like in Rangoli, dots and lines mean something else.
Dots mean, for me, like it's an end. But a line means I feel like there's a lot more to say. There are so many unsaid things that you want to say, and it's a prolonging feeling for me more. I feel like there's something more to say.
I don't think I do.
No, I do not know what a kolam is.
Is it a fruit?
So column is almost like a grid of dots around which like patterns are made.
It's supposed to be considered divine. I don't usually follow it, but I know my friends who follow the tradition of having kolam outside their house. So yeah, they considered it to be a very divine thing in the morning when they do, and it's also a rangoli during Diwali. Many people do it. So yeah, I don't know the true meaning of it.
So kolam is an artistic form, a self-expression of Indian women, especially Tamil women, draw these drawings in front of their houses first thing in the morning, like usually around sunrise, and also sometimes during sunset. And they would draw these drawings made out of rock powder or powdered rice. So it's the place where like the door is, and it's done on the ground. People can walk over it. It's one of those drawings that's ephemeral. So it starts with the day with meditative drawing. And I think what else is a good way to start? You get your fresh air, exercise, and meditation all once. So you start like some columns would be like the center line, the vertical line would be 7 dots. And then you can reduce it like, 1 dot on the top and 1 on the bottom. And all the way you keep reducing to 1. Or the notation could be like, you start with 8 and end with 2. And there's another grid. It's an isometric grid where you can get a hexagon or equilateral triangles when you connect the dots. Now that dot it comes with a lot of practice because it's all about spacing. It's a lot easier to do the square grid. But when it comes to the isometric, as you place your dot, you should know it's right. And then you get a perfect regular hexagon without any measurements, no angle, you're not worried about that. But it's all in the eyeballing. And what makes columns special is that the rules that the columns have, like certain kinds of columns, you have to follow those rules where like you draw the dots that are spaced evenly, and then you make a grid out of it, and then you weave your way through with a line that makes the shortest distance basically. And it goes around the dots. It has to cover all the dots, and it also has to get back to the starting point. Apart from it, it also has to maintain at least one symmetry. So there is this harmony, there is this discipline, there is the smooth flow of the lines. So it's a wonderful combination, and I think that's what makes kolam a little different. I learned it from my mother and my grandmother. And growing up in a township where in an apartment, I did not have as much opportunity to draw on the floor, but I would visit my grandparents and I would draw on the ground, like though I was a little bit of a rebel then. So I would not wake up at sunrise, but after that, so I would fill the space around my grandmother's column. My mother would draw in her new notebooks, and so even before I was born, she used to draw these columns, and so I'm so used to the dots and lines. And then my grandmother taught me like some of these rules. She would make very complicated columns, which I had never seen her with. I would ask her, how do you do this, such complicated columns? And she'll say, no, you just follow, your hand will move. And I didn't know how the hand would move. And like I would ask her these questions so many different ways. And then finally she said, oh, you just remember 1/4 of the column, and then you repeat it all 4 sides or like move around. But the thing is, I learned that the quarter was not just a physical quadrant quarter. It was that the line would go weave around all the other corners also and then come back here. So which means you really have to understand the flow of the line. I studied physics. My undergraduate degree is in physics and my graduate degree is in psychology. Worked with computers for a little bit and then have been a stay-at-home mom. And so when we moved countries is when I realized I missed columns a lot. It was something that I could, get to easier than a lot of other things. So I started painting columns, which was not easy because again, there is this part of impermanence attached to columns that, painting made it a little more permanent, which I was not too happy about in the beginning. But then I realized that, Indian philosophy and all of column is all about adapting. And so I decided that it's okay to paint. So I started painting columns and playing around with colors. And eventually I also got into more deeper into physics and psychology, and I realized that I could actually use column as a means, like, to understand concepts that were like a little harder. So I would use them as symbols representing the cosmos, or representing the problems, the obstacles, the challenges. It just like would change, and every time it's almost like when I start something new, then I will think in terms of column, how would I do it? But then there was also the other part, like talking about the dots and the lines. I mean, all drawings and paintings are nothing but dots and lines eventually. Like, they all come down to that. So if my dots and lines are pretty strong in terms of having them evenly spaced, unevenly spaced works well too. And so if I have to think of something that I don't know, I would make the dots, and I like to connect the dots, like, that children do. So I would make my own dots and I would connect them. They could also be different aspects, like, I could connect different fields. I could connect the cosmology with, with psychology or neuroscience, or even organizations, networks, the interconnectedness between all these different fields. And it felt like the column could bring them all together. And so that was something that in my work I started exploring. It also went into a lot of issues, boundaries, borders, so many different aspects. And so the column became like, it's not just a column, but a lot more to it than just dots and lines. And anybody who can hold a pencil or pen can make a column. And try to make a closed loop or connect them and come up with your own patterns. And that's what column is about. Columns have a lot of life lessons hidden in them. And in so many ways, the dots represent the challenges or obstacles, problems that a woman faces. And it could be any person, not just a woman, anyone. So if the dots represent that, and if we can weave our way around these dots or connect them. So when you have to come back to the starting point, but you also maintain a symmetry, like you have at least one symmetry. So if you can do that and get back to the starting point successfully, you'll be able to problem solve and your way through life. And if you can do that first thing in the morning, you get up and you start doing something like that in your mind, you are prepared for the day's ups and downs and life's ups and downs. So column is that way, has helped me personally that way with so many ups and downs or moves and changes or anything new. It's been that reminder that this is one another dot that needs to be taken care of. Columns are like life. They are the same. They're very similar, or I don't know how else to put it, but you draw a beautiful column. Even if it's not the best day for you, you start with a column. You do the best you can that particular day, and you let go. But then we try to do our best, the most beautiful one that we can do. And life is like that. We know it's going to go, and yet we strive to do our best in our life. It's the same as the column. You don't make it any less beautiful just because it's going to go.